We dive fin too deep. We're going to crunch the numbers as Neal Driscoll, the local cap guru, is going to give you guys a number of how much cap space the Miami Dolphins can create and how much you should expect them to have to open free agency next week, because everyone keeps talking about the number they can have, but no one's telling y'all how much they can have on day one. So we will go over that. Plus, we will also discuss the Miami Dolphins' biggest issue to fix heading into free agency. Durham Smythe finds a new team. Could DK Metcalf be coming to the AFC East? We got all that to talk about and so much more. Do me the favor, smash the like button, subscribe if you're new, and as always, let's get into this.
Touchdown! You have got to be kidding me. Jalen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score! Field on the near side, man open, touchdown! The run from Tua Tagovailoa. Touchdown! He's going deep! He's got it for a touchdown again! Touchdown!
Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. Let's go!
You're listening to Fin Too Deep.
Tua back to throw. Blitz coming. They get to him. No, he takes off running. And he's in. Touchdown, Miami.
With the sixth pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Jalen Waddle.
Giving you unfiltered, informed, and controversial takes on the Miami Dolphins and the NFL Draft. Here's Reason and Neal.
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason. We're back here for another one as we dive in too deep with myself and Neal Driscoll. And listen, we're going to talk about the cap. We're going to talk about Durham Smythe. We're going to talk about DK Metcalf, all that kind of jazz. But we're draft guys. So before we do get into all that, Neal, the combine was just this past weekend. I watched my dreams of Armand Membu fly out the door faster than he ran a 40 at that weight. What are your overall thoughts on how the combine went? Man, you know, you've been up here. I've been pitching, hey, Neal, imagine if we could get Will Johnson at 13 and then trade back up from 48 and get Nick Emmanwori. We saw that go out the window as fast as he could run a 40 as well. What are your thoughts on the combine and everyone who tested there?
Yeah, look, I thought there were some really strong athletic performances without a doubt. You know, some people that maybe resurrected their draft stock, like a guy like James Pierce, you know, forgot, you know, he ran his 40 in his hoodie because he forgot his t-shirt back at the at the hotel apparently or something. But no, I thought, you know, one of my big takeaways actually is that it's very deep in the trenches, like we've talked about the whole time. And three performances really stood out for me when it relates to the Dolphins that are outside of the trenches, and it's the defensive backs. It was Malachi Starks, Nick Emmanwori, and Jihaad Barron, because we have needs at defensive line and offensive line. We have needs at safety. We have a need at cornerback now, you know, with Kendall Fuller gone. So it was good to see, and you can't ignore the elephant in the room, which was Nick Emmanwori looked like Derwin James out there, right? Like you can't ignore that. And in the movement drills, in the back pedal, Malachi Starks looked so damn
phenomenal.
I mean, it kind of reminds me of when Minkah was coming out of Alabama and Derwin James was coming out of that Florida State that year. Two different players that kind of play the same position. Both were can't miss prospects. What's your favorite flavor, right? And
yeah,
like I will say that knowing that our defensive coordinator is Anthony Weaver, who's had exposure to kind of how they brought along Kyle Hamilton in Baltimore, it does get me intrigued to see what Nick Emmanwori could be in this defense. But even better, like, it's going to be impossible. And I'm not going to, what do I say, is for the Dolphins not to have a really good pick at 13. And depending on how that board shakes, Reason, I think that the move could be moving back to a team like Denver, who might want to jump up for Colston Loveland.
Or Gene T's on the board, they would probably move up for him.
Yeah, or something like that, because I do think that one of those targets that we're talking about, Emmanwori, Starks, some of the offensive linemen are going to be there. Let's just say at pick 20. And if you could facilitate a trade with Denver right there and pick up another second-round pick, which I think is like pick 55 in that draft, like, that would be a pretty damn good way to go about it. Like, just let the board come to you. Don't trade before the draft, right? Because someone could fall at 13 that has no business being there, right? Like, and I'm all about it, and we're pounding the table for trenches. But if, like, Ted McMillan's there, the Dolphins are going to have a decision to make. You know what I mean? At wide receiver.
Yeah,
right?
because you could also call the Chargers and say, hey, you want to come up and get Ted?
Right. Or I'll tell you this. I think there'd be a lot of people lined up for Ted if he fell. So I do think the Dolphins are actually after that pivot, after the first 12 picks, I think they're in a good spot to trade back if they wanted to. But for me, I'm doing that, but I don't want to do it until I know who's available at 13.
Yeah, I agree.
Because you never know who could shake out and fall down the draft. Right?
Yeah, because, I mean, you could get calls on Ted if he's on the board. You could turn around and select Ted and then get on the horn with those teams that were calling to move up and say, you want Tyreek?
Yeah, and look, I'll tell you one guy that I think one of the takeaways I also had was I don't think Mason Graham looked good. I don't think.
Yeah.
He kind of looked loose to me. He didn't. He's a tough dude in the trenches, but let's be honest, he's a little undersized, right? And he did not look like he had top-notch athleticism. Like, I have Kenny Grant ranked better than him, but I don't think it was a great showing for Mason Graham. Now, with that said, if you're on the board at 13 and he falls there, you run to the podium, right? Like,
I want to get your thoughts though, because you mentioned his name, and I know people have in the community have talked about him as an option at 13. I wouldn't want it, but where do you have Jahdae Barron? Do you have him as a slot, or do you have because I have him as a slot that could eventually move to the boundary in year 2 or year 3? Where do you have him as?
Yeah, I call it a sack. I call it a Swiss Army knife. Like, he's a guy that can do it all. But I like Barron. I think he's 16th on my big board.
Yeah.
I don't love him for the Dolphins at 13. And it's not that I don't think he's a good player. Because I said, one of the things I took away from someone that was there told me the player that everyone here is talking about, that not everyone on social media is talking about, is Jahdae Barron. So there's a good buzz about him. For me, it's just such a standard Chris Greer type of draft pick. Like, you fall in love with the defensive back. You don't really probably have a plan for him. You like that he's versatile, but what does that mean for you? Where are you going to play him? If he's a slot, we do have Kader Kohu.
That's why I'm like, eh.
It's like, and it's not that it's a bad player, but like, I'll be blunt. If Will Johnson is there, almost my whole draft plan goes out the window, and I'm taking Will Johnson. Like, I think he could be a Patrick Surtain II in this league. I like Barron, but I don't love him because I'm confident that got somebody like Kenny Grant, somebody who I value a little bit more for this team. And if they're going to go non-trenches, my short list is probably Malachi Starks.
Yeah, you take Emmanwori over him, right?
I'd probably take Emmanwori. Oh, I'd take Emmanwori over Jahdae Barron for sure. And, Kenny Grant is a guy that I'd like, but like, I just think there's just going to be 5 or 6 players that I prefer to Jahdae Barron. I'll say this though, Reason, I don't know if we're going to have that problem. Like, I think he could go before us. Like,
really,
like the Saints, like, scream team to me. If there really is noise that that Dallas could move on from Trayvon Diggs, like, that could be a good landing spot for them. San Francisco, like they're like, I just looked at what they're losing this offseason. Hargrave, Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga, Chavarius Ward on the defense side of the ball. Trent Williams is going to be 37 years old. Like, They're a team that's in flux. If I was the 49ers, I'd almost probably see what I could get for Brock Purdy and start over. But, somebody's going to fall to the Dolphins' lap that I think will be a better player than Jihaad Barron. And it's not to say we don't like Barron. I like Barron. I think he's a good football player. I just think the Dolphins can do better. That to me is like a B move. I want a B+, A- type move at 13, to be honest.
So he tested really well. We have a need there at in the second spot. What would your thoughts be about Jihaad Campbell at 13?
Dude, he's awesome. I like him a lot. I like Jalen Walker a little bit better. I do think Jihaad Campbell's one guy that helped himself a lot by being there. And just his presence at the podium, like, he's a guy that gets it. I have a hard time thinking that he'll outlast Atlanta at 15 if he's there. But, yeah, Jihaad Campbell to me is an awesome football player, man. Like, you couldn't go wrong with a player like that. I would take Jihaad Campbell over Jihaad Barron probably for the Dolphins as well.
Who's the first offensive lineman off the board?
Armand Membo, no doubt.
Yeah.
I think he can go as high as 4 to New England at this point. Like, look, the tape screened stud, when you combine that with the athletic profile and you have a gauntlet where it's like New England, Jacksonville, the Jets, all those teams drafted, and then we have
San
Dallas
Fran
and San Fran right in front of us. The likelihood that he falls to us at this
zero, pretty much.
It's zero.
You'd have to trade up.
I think Will Campbell will fall to us if that's a guy that a lot of people like.
I'll be all over that, baby.
Because I think the Bears just said, "Hey, I got Joe Tooney and Jonah Jackson. We're
out
of
the
the interior market."
Yeah,
and that's where I thought Will Campbell had a lot of chance to go. So that could be a player that's there for Miami. But dude, isn't it hard to give up one of these kind of key defensive playmakers on the defense side of the ball? Whether it is like a linebacker like Campbell or Walker, whether it's a pass rusher, whether it's a defensive lineman, like, don't you view this as a draft where we can add, like, we have Waddle, A-Chain, Tyreek for who knows how long, Jonnu Smith, Tua on offense. Like, don't you think this could be the draft where you add a guy to Chop and Sealer? Like, outside of that, and Jordan Brooks probably is our nucleus on defense, but I don't know if, like, we're going to lose Holland. We're probably going to lose Jalen Phillips after his 5th-year option, right? Like, I don't know. This is probably definitely the swan song for Bradley Chubb, who just redid his deal to stay here. Like, don't you view this as a draft where we can get like a marquee defensive player? I don't know, man.
Yeah, the top 3 guys I want, 2 of them are defensive, right? I want Kenneth Grant, Will Johnson, or Armand Membo. Everyone knows I'm on board with Tet McMillan too, but my top 3 dream picks, 2 of them are defensive, really, for me. I think this is you heard me. I was dreaming about doubling up on Will Johnson and Nick Emmanwori if he fell. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I think this is, and then you look at the defensive tackle class, and it's just so stacked. What did you think about the tight ends? I mean, I know that's been a big conversation. Mason Taylor, I thought, left a lot of money on the table. If he would have tested, he would have blown it out. Terrence Ferguson instead is the one who stepped up. Gunnar Helm. Gunnar Helm. A lot of us expected him to run in the 4.7s. He ran 4.8. 4 was his second attempt, and then we find out that he ran both attempts with a sprained ankle due to his first false start. And then he finished all the on-field workout drills. Crazy with that ankle. What a competitor. What did you think of the tight end group?
Yeah, look, I do think that there's 2 really good tight ends in this group, even though I don't think the Dolphins should be in on them. But Colston Loveland's my tight end 1. Tyler Warren's my tight end 2. I prefer the tight end that can separate a little bit better, just to be transparent. But I think Terrence Ferguson made himself some money.
Yeah, he did.
He's a guy that I think is a kind of a plug-and-play, hard-nosed football player with good athletic traits. Gunnar Helm didn't run a good 40, but, like, I'd still take him at the end of round 3.
Well, he's going to run again at his pro day with his healed ankle.
Yeah, I still think Gunnar Helm's good.
And I thought Luke Lachey really upped his value, like, with his athletic testing, too, because obviously people got the questions because of injuries, but I thought his testing was really good. And that guy's gonna be a steal when he goes in the 5th. I'm telling you.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, the guy that, like, I know has become a really popular name on the internet, Georgia Tech, Jackson Haas. Like, I do think that he'd be a really good replacement for Julian Hill. Maybe not our tight end 2, But if he's there with one of those fives, I would run. Like Durham Smythe fell on the sword for the tight end room, but Julian Hill should be right behind him. Let's be honest, right? Like he should be. And I do think there's inline, but for me, man, like I'll be honest, like I think it's a good tight end group. I'm not too concerned about it because I don't think the Dolphins are going to invest that high of a pick on them. And if they do, we've talked about it. I could see them falling in love with the Tyler Warren. That to me, good
Mason Taylor.
Player.
I'm telling you, that just screams Dolphins.
Yeah, you think he'll be there at 98 though?
Bro, I could see them seriously considering 48 with him.
Yeah, that would be
because I don't even know if he'll be there at 48. Yeah. I think he's gonna go in the first 10 picks of the second round.
Yeah.
And I think if he would have tested, he would have won the 20s.
Well, I'll say something that I did take away that's really running back related. Remember we talked about last week, Mel Kiper had Omarion Hampton at 12 to Dallas?
Yeah.
It seems like he is, from things I've heard, that he is a lock to go in the first round.
Yeah, he is.
And like, I like Omarion Hampton fine, but like.
And Caleb Johnson's sneaking into the back half.
And it does seem like Malachi Starks is going to have a draft day fall from everything I hate. So when I think about like what could be the home run, to your earlier scenario, you take Will Johnson or Kenneth Grant at 13, and if you get to round 2 early on, man, you do whatever you have to raise your pick from 48 to go get Malachi Starks.
That'd be disgusting.
That would be unbelievable, man.
Yeah, that'd be ridiculous.
That would be unbelievable because that running group is definitely to me the strength of this draft, and I do think we need to be on the market for one in the 5th round, something like that to counter our mood. But I believe A-Chain and Jalen Wright can get the job done at a high level. I just think they might need a power guy. One free agent I'll throw out there, Reese, I don't know what you think about is if he was cheap because he has an injury history, J.K. Dobbins for me.
Oh, I'll give you – so I'm doing my free agency list on Saturday. I'll give you a name.
Who's that?
Okay. We want to fix the short yardage situation. If this guy stays healthy and it looks like Spot Track and PFF only projecting to make $2 or $3 million a year, I'd go get Nick Chubb.
Oh, yeah. Look.
Don't make him the starter, part of a rotation with Wright. Oh, buddy. People seem to be forgetting who Nick Chubb is when he's healthy. And you go get that guy for $2 or $3 million and just add him as your running back 3 and then draft a guy in the 5th round or 6th round, 7th round, or as a UDFA. I think you're cooking with some fish grease.
He's probably one of the top 5 players that I respect in the NFL, Nick Chubb.
Yeah, bro, that guy's
on that Calais Campbell list, like those guys that just doesn't matter where they go. They keep the same approach. They're the consummate professionals. Like Nick Chubb to me, man, dude, that injury looked like rough. But like you said, get him on a cheap deal, prove him. Yeah, man, I like those injury-plagued running backs. Like if you came to Miami, right, you wouldn't have to be a bell cow. You wouldn't have to take on that load. And I honestly want a guy that when we get to the 4-yard line, A-Chain's drinking some Gatorade and they're pounding the ball up the middle with them. And I'll say something else, and this won't be popular. If they want to make a bold move, cut Alec Ingold and sign Patrick Ricard. Like I'm on like I like Ingold. I thought he had a rough year last year, to be honest, for what we're paying him as a fullback. Pat Ricard is the best blocking fullback by a mile, and he's a physical, hard-nosed son of a bitch. I think that would be a dynamic way to improve your short down and distance offense as well.
Okay, finally on the combine.
Final thought on the combine?
No. Finally on the combine, I want to ask you about this.
Okay.
What did you think about the quarterback class? Because Will Howard's arm and Dylan Gabriel's arm looked terrible. Jalen Milroe was throwing bombs. Dart was throwing deep, like dimes deep with guys he's never worked with before. A lot of people came away from who were at Indy really higher than a lot of us are on Quinn Ewers. Tyler Show looked good. Dylan Gabriel and Will Howard, though. Who told them to throw? What did you think about the quarterback class? Because Neal, also talk about the testing, but the word coming out of the combine, the league is seeing what we've been seeing. Shedeur is not that guy, bro.
There's a school of thought that thinks the Giants is so desperate for a quarterback that they would take him to, you know what I think? I think Shedeur Sanders falls all the way down to where the Steelers are, and that's who they end up drafting. I feel like he's destined to be there. I think he looked. I heard he handled himself kind of like a fool. I mean, he's not that good. You know what I mean? He's just not. And I mean, Jackson Dart looked really good. I really do think so. He's starting to have that Bo Nix type of rise and feel to him. So good for him.
Milroe's got the tools and the traits.
Dude,
shows
like
Tyler Shaw, if he wasn't going to be 26, he's got the tools and the traits.
But I'll say this: if you're to get in a quarterback and it gets past round 2 for me, you're pretty much just wasting your time. I don't think, outside of the top 5 or 6 guys that any of them are going to really blossom into good players. Like Dylan Gabriel would be a waste pick, would be an absolute waste of a pick for us. Will Howard, I know he played well during the college playoffs, but like he looks good. Tyler Show is a guy who's definitely moving up the boards. His age to me is something that would throw me off a little bit. He's a great athlete. There's no doubt about it. But like, I think it's Dart, Milroe are the 2 guys that are going to ascend. They're probably the next quarterbacks, but I do think there's a market specifically with the Indianapolis Colts and Seattle Seahawks for Quinn Ewers. I don't know if it's as early as round 2, but like he did. Yeah. And you got, he was at time, at least in the draft community, deemed a top 10 pick.
Yep.
I think he's a guy that could go a little bit earlier than anticipated. So like my takeaway for the quarterback class is the Dolphins are probably better served getting a guy. I'll tell you, I like Gardner Minshew. I know he's got his mistakes, but he might be available. Go give me a vet, because the reality is if Tua does go down, Gardner Minshew's not going to save him, but neither is Dylan Gabriel, right? So
like I want Kyle McCord, but I want him in like the late 4th with that last comp pick, or in the 5th round. He's not going to be there.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be there because there's desperation here, man. Like there's so many of these guys need quarterbacks. We see it every year. That's one constant thing we see in the draft is that these quarterbacks go. Like they just go. Yeah. So you look at it like we know that the Browns, the Titans, the Giants, the Jets, the Saints, the Raiders, the Seahawks, the Colts, I'm just going spitballing off the top of my head, all need quarterbacks, right? Like it's one of those things. But I will say that like I thought Jackson Dart looked and composed himself like a franchise quarterback there. I really do.
Yeah. You love that haircut, eh?
Who is it?
No, the haircut on Dart, where he's got the shaved underneath and he's got the flow going back there. Yeah. Guy's too much for me. It's great. You know what I just like? You could tell like when he played, he's got that moxie, eh? Like he conducts himself like a quarterback. Like I said about Shedeur, listen, I don't, these teams that are saying he was arrogant or whatever, like I wasn't in the meeting. I don't know. But I do know I didn't like the stuff that I saw when he was going in front of cameras and throwing his offensive line under the bus this year, along with his dad. Like that told me all I needed to know. I just don't see the leadership qualities needed at that position. Like, and I'll use our guy as an example. Look at Tua. How many times would Jesse Davis be to blame, but Tua's out here taking the blame himself? Right? Like putting it on himself, not putting it on Jesse Davis. Shedeur Sanders would be the first one to blame that offensive line in Miami publicly. You know what I mean? And I could just see it causing a headache. I honestly believe this, bro. If it wasn't for his name, would he even be a discussion of the top 10 right now?
No, it's just, here's the thing though. Who's the one team that you could see that would?
The Raiders.
There's 2 teams I think that are foolish enough to take them. Browns and Raiders. And Raiders.
Apparently the Browns love him, eh? I don't know if you saw that, but my thing is, how there was reported like 2 teams came away thinking that? The first team that came to my mind is it's got to be the Browns. You don't want to play in Cleveland, right? And then I hear reports that Cleveland loves him, and Cleveland would take him at 2. So I don't know. Yeah, and Adam Schefter said last week, and he was pretty hell-bent on that the Browns would go Shedeur if he was there at 2 and Cam Ward went 1. Like that to me, that as a Dolphins fan, that's exactly what I want. Let's go. Someone take Milroe and Dart in the top 10 too. Let's go. Yeah. Let them drop.
I did hear that the Saints like Dart a lot. So
you know who I quietly heard? I've heard the opposite on the Giants. I've heard the Giants are actually quietly really infatuated with Dart and not Shedeur. I've heard that Shedeur is smoke. I've heard Dart is the guy that they're actually really high on privately.
Well, here's the thing about this. If it does go, let's just say it goes Cam Ward 1, Shedeur 2, right?
Yeah,
Which is,
yeah.
I think, then if you're the Giants, like, you just paid Brian Burns. Like, I mean, look, and we're talking about Abdul Carter potentially falling to the Patriots, which would make me sick. But, like, what do you do if you're the Giants? Like, do you go get Travis Hunter? Like, sure, like, he's a good player, but, like, what are you going to do at quarterback? You're really going to go get Aaron Rodgers. Like, that's going to be your plan. All right, Brian Dable. I know a guy that will make your resume look great and optimize all the words on there for $350. So if you go with Aaron Rodgers, I'll give you my buddy's email so he can do your resume because you're going to be fired before the season's over. Because that is just, did he not learn from what the Jets did with Rodgers? Like, I don't know. The Giants, like, I don't know what their move is because I view only one starting quality free agent quarterback. It's Sam Darnold, but I think he's overrated because of 1 year in Minnesota.
Yeah.
I think he's still a bottom 7 starting quarterback in football, and that someone's going to overpay because they're just desperate. But, like, man, the Giants just find themselves in the outside looking in, which I think might get them to be desperate enough to give the Titans a ransom for that number 1 overall pick. And then Tennessee could get Carter at 3. But, man, I don't know.
See, if I'm the Browns, I'm trading Myles Garrett and I'm drafting Abdul Carter.
Dude, they just freed up all that money on the Watson restructure. I think they're going to try to throw a bag at Garrett to keep him.
Man, I'd trade him for a bunch of picks because you don't want to be there and just load up in the draft.
Me too. I traded to Philadelphia, and I get 32 this year.
And you got the replacement sitting right there staring you in the face with Abdul Carter.
Right. Agreed, dude. I don't like, but the Browns just, they operate in a bad business, man. They do. So,
well, it's like, look at the Bengals right now.
Dude, it's not going to happen.
Sam Hubbard retires, and now you tell the number 1 pass rusher in the league, Trey Hendrickson,
and the Commanders are going to be all over him. But, man, I'll tell you what, is all these names that are thrown around, Trey Hendrickson to me might be the most underrated player in the entire football league. Look at his numbers, dude.
I know, it's crazy.
It's insane. He is such a good hard-nosed football player. And it's funny because we signed Tua, Waddle, and Tyreek, and everybody's up in arms because we paid it. I don't know necessarily we made the right decision, but the Bengals made the same decision, and it's like, oh, good for them for keeping T. Higgins. Like, I would take Trey Hendrickson 10 out of 10 times over T. Higgins.
And what are your thoughts on the whole DK situation? Because, I mean, I would trade Tyreek for him straight up, but there are 2 of 4 teams that are really heavily in on him.
I'm scared he's going to go to the Bills, man. I'm scared he's going to go to the Bills. I think he's a good fit for what he wants. The asking price is steep, a first and a third,
and you got to pay him. He wants $30 million a year, apparently.
Yeah, that's a lot to give up for DK, but I don't know, man. It's, if you're the Buffalo Bills, would you rather have DK or would you rather have Emeka Egbuka, right?
Or Keon Coleman,
right? I can see it. I do think he gets moved, though. I think where there's a lot of smoke there's fire, and I do think.
Do the Bills make the most sense to you because of their desperation and you're getting him out of the NFC?
Yeah, and he's in their windows right now. He wants to go to a contender. That window is right now.
The Chiefs should be trying to move money around for that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, he's the big domino that could fall, that could change the landscape of the AFC or NFC, right? Depending on where he goes, that's a – I know he has his warts from a personality but man, he's turned out to be a freaking great receiver.
Oh, he's a freak of nature, bro.
So yes, I would trade Tyreek Hill for him at this point, and I think Tyreek's better than him. But I think he's a compliment to what we need here.
Exactly, and he's younger.
Yeah, and I will say I don't know if Miami's the best place for a guy like DK Metcalf, but
true.
Yeah, it's intriguing that he happened, and I know the Packers were rumored out there. I don't know, man. I feel like Buffalo has a lot. He feels like a guy that I could see doing snow angels after scoring a touchdown for the Bills or something.
What if someone said in the chat, they made a good point. Bills are bargain bin shoppers. Bills are bargain bin shoppers. They'll sign Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, I'll say this. I like Cooper Kupp. if he comes off that
his
contract.
numbers, man, have been in the tank the last couple seasons.
Well, look, we'll say the one guy that I'll keep a name on for us, because we've talked about Dolphins being potentially interested. If the Commanders do release Jonathan Allen,
it's happening.
Yeah, I think the Dolphins are going to be in play.
He's on my free agent target list.
And here's why. The reason we can go sign him and he doesn't impact our compensatory pick formula. I don't know. I think they're going to be trying to keep that 3rd round pick with Javon Holland. So,
I think he's only going to cost you 10 or 12 million.
And he's a great counter to Zach Sealer. He's a great counter to Zach Sealer.
Yeah, John. I think that could, and Neal, I think that could end up being the splashy move of the offseason if he's cut. I think that's who they'll go all in on. If he's available on day 1 of free agency, that's who they're going all in on. If he's available tomorrow, that's who I think they'll go all in on. I really honestly do.
I agree. I think he'll be a high priority.
Yeah, we were the first one to report their interest in him last year, so we know it's been over a year, right?
Yeah. And look, I don't know his age off the top of my head. He's not young, but he's not old. He's had some injuries, but like Jonathan Allen, this won't be popular, but Jonathan Allen's probably a better overall football player than Zach Sealer. Like, if we're being honest, or at least they're on the same wavelength. Like, they're close. So
he's 30.
Yeah, he's 30. So you could get him probably, like you said, $12 million, I would say. And just because you sign him to a $12 million deal, it could be with a $5 million cap hit, right? And a signing bonus paid to it. So I think he's a guy to look out for. And I think they'll sign like him and one starting quality offensive guard, to me, with some other depth pieces probably added, would be a good start to free agency.
Mm-hmm. All right. So let's get into this. Talking about free agency.
There we go.
The big question has been about cap space. Now, let's get into the cap space. But before we do get into the cap space, something relative to that, your thoughts on the whole Bradley Chubb situation?
Yeah, look, man, I was good with Chubb leaving, but I also think that we've seen 2 veteran football players in Armstead and Chubb take less money to stay here. Like, they took less money to be Miami Dolphins, and I like that, because you put Bradley Chubb out there on the market right now, he's probably maybe the best overall player available. Unless you like Josh Sweat more, or an older Khalil Mack, an injury-prone Joey Bosa. Like, I do think that Chubb, the injuries are concerning, right? Like, his whole career has been riddled with injuries, but the year before, he was the best player on our defense. Like, he really was. Like, it is what it is. So the fact that he's going to be here, and I don't know, like, that's, we know where the Dolphins stand from a cap standpoint after the Terron Armstead release. We don't know the exact number of what this frees up with Chubb, but I know that the Dolphins are going to be sitting pretty before they touch one contract in terms of restructuring. And that's a really good position to be in heading into the draft, when it wasn't long ago that we were like 15 million over the cap, right? So again, Brandon Scherr, Chris Greer, and just the way the NFL contracts are structured this day point, there's just so many ways to manipulate it. And the Dolphins have gotten as good as anyone in football at figuring ways to move money around and to structure deals to make them have the flexibility to kind of go out and do whatever they want. Because I'll say something crazy. I don't think it's going to happen. The Dolphins could go trade for anyone in the world in the league they want right now. They could take on a $30 million a year contract. I'm not saying they should or move, but I'm saying that they could easily create the space to go get Myles Garrett if they wanted to. Again, I don't think they're going to do anything crazy like that, but I think that's a great position to be in, because it gives them the flexibility as they sign players, as players become available. They always have the ability to go pivot, and that's why they can make deals when Tyreek Hill becomes available for trade, because they've created an avenue of cap flexibility, which, I'll be honest, like, as bad as the results have been on the field in playoffs and all that stuff that we've talked about ad nauseum, they're running a good business on the back end. They are running a good business
in terms of structure and how
structures
they're setting
and
themselves
deals
up
and the money. Look, and they're losing. There's going to be sacrificial lambs. They're going to lose Javon Holland. They lost Christian Wilkins. But my big takeaway from that is keeping Christian Wilkins, keeping Javon Holland. You're paying A+ money to B+ players. And that is an easy way to put yourself in a bad situation. Even Robert Hunt, he got A+ money and he's a B+ player.
Went to the Pro Bowl, though.
He did. But like that doesn't mean right guard's not a huge need for us.
I know,
and
yeah.
I look in retrospect, if we had the cap space now, maybe you keep a Robert Hunt. But
exactly.
I think that the Dolphins, even it's going to be the same scenario right now with Holland, with Jalen Phillips next offseason. And depending on his health and his production this year, I don't know if it's wrong to do what they did with Holland and let him test the market and ultimately leave and continue to win the compensatory formula in your favor, because you can't play A+ money to a guy that, maybe Phillips is an A- player, but you're a 0 if you can't be on the football field on Sundays.
Yeah, I 110% agree. And I think there's some interesting, I think there's some, I'm going to tell you this right now. You know who I think you could probably get cheap on the free agent market, who if you got in here and he performed up to your standard, you could keep him with Chop and you could make moving off of Jalen Phillips easier, is Azeez Ojulari.
Yeah, Georgia. Yeah, he's a free agent.
Yeah, and remember he set the Jets franchise record for sacks as a rookie, right?
Giants, yep.
Sorry, the Giants, my bad. I apologize. Yep. I got New York right. But then they started reining him back the last couple of years because they just didn't develop him. They didn't help develop him as a run stopper. I think that's a guy you could bring in as a situational pass rusher in year one, and Weaver can get his hands on him, make him a better run stopper because he's already been in the league for a couple of years. And that's a guy where you could look at and you could be like, hey, Jalen Phillips, we've got, another year left of Azeez Ojulari because he signed up for a 2-year deal. Hit the bricks. And if Mo Kamara continues to ascend, hit the bricks. You know what I mean? Because the problem we're getting into now is you paid Tua, okay? Tua was injury prone. A lot of people were against it. We're getting into Jalen Phillips. Let's be real here. Jalen Phillips has had a lot more serious injuries that could hinder his performance. And what I mean by this is Jalen Phillips is known for that explosion, right? That burst he has in short areas that allows him to win off the line of scrimmage, et cetera, et cetera. How many lower body extremity major injuries has he had now? He's going to be losing some of that explosiveness.
Yeah. I'm concerned about it for sure. And that's where you can't dismiss pass rusher at 13. You can't. I know we have Chubb and Phillips. Chubb and Phillips, to me, are 2 question marks. Good football players, but they're question marks at this point. One name I think they're going to be interested in bringing in on a very cheap deal, and they tried to trade for him before last season, is Matt Judon. And I've heard that Matt Judon would like to play in Miami. And I'm thinking something maybe like 1 year, $3 million to get him as a veteran. And he didn't play great in Atlanta, but the year before, Matt Judon was a beast in New England, right? So it's like, did the Patriots make the right move and get rid of a player at the right time? But I could see them getting a cheap deal done with him and having an edge group of Chop, Phillips, Chubb, Kamara, Cameron Good, and Judon. I could see that happening. But after this year, I think Chubb's probably done, right? Depending on that restructure and how the money looks. The franchise tag Jalen Phillips will probably be $20+ million a year. I don't see them having the ability to do that. It will be interesting to see. It's a crossroads of Jalen Phillips' career, and I say that with Jalen Phillips being one of my 5 favorite players on the team. I love Jalen Phillips, but I'd be lying to you if I said that he probably came back too soon last year. Yeah, he's a warrior. His approach to rehabbing and coming back from injury is unparalleled. I think he's a beast.
Yeah, I agree.
Some people just get bit with that injury bug and it doesn't go away. And I have to see him be healthy for 17 games. I got to hold it to the same standard we hold the quarterback to, right? I got to hold it to the same standard we hold Terron Armstead to. Just because someone's younger doesn't mean they can avoid the same label that some of these other guys get. And that's where, I hope Jalen Phillips gets 15 sacks and says, eat shit, Neal Driscoll. Like, that's what I hope happens. But I got to see it before I can, sign off on any extension for a player, especially when you're probably looking. I mean, Phillips is probably a $20 million a year player on the open market, man. It is what it is. I mean, that's the cap's going up. People are getting big money. Now we're getting running backs getting $20 million a year. The cap's going up. I laughed when that happened with Saquon because you and I were fighting people for $12 million for Jonathan Taylor a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. Chubb, Phillips, good to have him back. I think Chubb will probably be fairly healthy, man, because he didn't play at all last year. So, we'll see, man. Bottom line, Chop's going to be the best pass rusher on this team next year and for the years to come.
Craig Bryant says, 2-part question. JP and what draft capital would get Micah Parsons, and would you do it?
Man,
you would probably need a first, a day 2 pick, and then probably another day 2 or day 1 pick from next year, and Phillips. They're gonna ask a ransom. If DK's getting a first and a third, Micah would get 2 firsts and a third.
Yeah, I would trade 13, Phillips, a second, and next year's second if I had to. But it's Myles Garrett, it's TJ Watt, then it's Michael Parsons, probably the best defensive players of football. I would love it. The Cowboys aren't going to let him get out of it.
No.
They're maneuvering money to sign him.
Yeah.
Michael Parsons is the modern day Lawrence.
He's a franchise.
I would trade Chop Robinson straight up in a pick for Michael Parsons.
You might be able to twist my arm into Chop Robinson and Jalen Phillips for him. To be honest with you.
Right. Agreed, man. I mean, that's what kind of player he is. So, if he becomes available, that line is going to be really long of people that are interested in trading for him. The Cowboys can't. The Cowboys aren't going to let him go. I doubt it very much. And
I don't know if you saw, but Evan Ingram just got released by the Jacksonville Jaguars.
That's interesting.
But we don't need him. We have Jonnu. That's not what we need.
Well, no. But I think it's interesting for the fact that I always had the Jags as a fringe tight end team in this draft because I think Ingram, he was okay for the Giants. He kind of had a really good year in Jacksonville, but he's never really proven to be the player that I think a lot of people thought he was. I could see them low-key being a player at 5, and I know it sounds rich, or in a trade back scenario for a tight end.
Yo, check this out. They save $5.98 million. They're taking on a $13.5 million dead cap.
That's crazy. That's crazy. So,
bro, the Cons are running the Jags like AEW right now. I don't know what's going on.
He's a really bad owner, man. He is.
Yeah, he's not great. He's got money, but
and
no common sense.
Ingram's not a fit for us. We have
we have Jonnu.
Yeah, Jonnu.
We need a guy now to complement Jonnu that can be an inline, a Y guy. That's what we need. 100%. we don't need an Evan Ingram. So let's get into the cap.
Yep, I got my notes.
So I'll give you the floor here, but I'll set it up for everyone. We'll start off with. We'll get into how much they can create and what they'll have on opening day. But first thing, you've gone over, we've had discussions about, there's certain things you don't like as restructures. What would you label as the best moves the Miami Dolphins can make to create cap space before free agency?
Yeah, look, they're 12.2 million under after the official transaction of Terron Armstead.
Okay.
So that went through officially today. So they're about 12.2. What we don't know is what Bradley Chubb's contract looks like, but we know it's changed. And what I'm going to take as the foundation of it is that a Chubb restructure saved 13.6 for Miami. I think that 13.6 has moved to an incentivized bonus, so that I think that the Dolphins after Chubb are right now going to be about 25.8 million under the cap before touching a contract. So when we start free agency, and one thing I like to remind people when you look at free agency is, sure, if we sign player X to a 2-year, $20 million deal, that works out to be $10 million per year average. But the way deals are structured, year one tends to be high signing bonus, low cap hit. So, if we go and sign a James Daniel as a right guard and a Will Hernandez as a right guard, and we get each of them on a $10 million annual average contract and it's $20 million that you would anticipate it being an annual average against the cap, that might not be a hard hit of $20 million against the cap. That's one thing to always know. And then the other thing that you always have to keep in mind is you only the top 51 players on your roster can figure into your salary cap spend. So if the lowest paid player on our roster right now is Quentin Bell at $900,000, and we go sign Matt Judon to a $3 million deal, that would only eat $2.1 million in salary cap space because Judon would add to the 51 roster and Quentin Bell would fall off the roster. So that $900,000 falls off. The $3 million goes on. $3 million minus $900,000, 2.1. So those are things to know when you look at the draft, because too often someone's like, well, you can't afford to pay Myles Garrett $30 million a year if you only have $28 million in cap space. But you can, depending on how the structure of the deal is and the bonuses. It's going to cost Miami about $11 million to $12 million to pay their draft class, right? Now that we know that Bradley Chubb is not going to be a post-June cut, you have to equate to $12 million to spend on signing your draft class. So that's something to keep in mind. But so let's just say 25.8 before restructure as well. There's 5 easy restructures that they can make that I think are no-brainers that create, well, one of them was a tougher decision, I'll say, but there's 4 that are no-brainers. And what you're doing is you're taking what I'm saying is the cap savings, and you are expanding that over the life of the contract. So the first name that I come up with is Aaron Brewer. You save $4 million in cap space. So what that means is if Aaron Brewer, what I think he's on the contract for 26 and 27, it would just add $2 million in 26, $2 million in 27 to his cap hit and give Miami $4 million in savings. So I know it's a lot of numbers I'm throwing. It's easier to demonstrate with a whiteboard. I have one right behind me, but I don't have an expo marker. But if they, I'll just throw these 4 names to start. If they do Austin Jackson, Zach Sealer, Jordan Brooks, and Aaron Brewer, right?
Is the Sealer extension or a restructure?
It's a restructure, but I think if they sign up to an extension, they'll save similar money. So extend them, reward them proactively for his play. So you don't have these stare downs right before the season kicks off, right? But 12.8, 17.8, 18.6. Just those 4 names would give you another $22.6 million in cap savings, right? So if we're at 25.8 and we go to 22 plus 6 additional, we are going to be at boom, 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 $48.4 million in cap space, which is a big number, right? Considering we just were $15 million over a couple months ago. Then it comes the Tua Tagovailoa contract, and I know that a lot of people think if you restructure Tua, you're hitching your wagon to him longer. Look, you might have to pay a few $1 million more guaranteed money, but it doesn't prevent you from moving on if you had to in a scenario where Tua got hurt. It's $19.3 million in cap savings. It's too advantageous for the Dolphins to not explore. And here's the reality is if they don't use it, they can carry it over to next year anyway. Adding that $19.3 million would put them at $67.7 million under the salary cap, right? Like that is unbelievable to be where they could. They could still touch Tyreek if they wanted to for $7 million in restructure, but I doubt they're going to. They could touch Jalen Ramsey, but I doubt they're going to. The reason that the Austin Jackson, Sealer, Brooks, and Brewer contracts are so good is because the amount that you're restructuring is so low when it's extrapolated over the remaining years. Like Jordan Brooks saved you $5.8 million. You're only adding, $2.9 million to your cap for the next 2 years. Long story short, a lot of this money is going to be offset by salary cap increases that are just going to organically happen. So they're pushing the money downhill, but the credit card limit is also growing as well. Exactly. So they keep pushing it, but it's growing. So, will they eventually have to pay a tab? Sure. But what does that tab look like? We don't know if the cap continues to grow 15 to 20% every year. So the Dolphins could be in a world where they just continue to operate at the level they are right now, where they utilize restructures to cap space. They're okay paying it because the cap's going up, and then they can throw out void years onto deals as well. We just got to see how it shakes out. And
would you restructure Austin Jackson? Because I'm one of those guys where you can get, if you look at the contract, you can get out in the 2026 offseason. The guy can't stay healthy. Like one of the things I was talking about taking Armand Membo or even a Jonas Savannah who can play guard and tackle is you can kick one of those guys in at guard and then you can get out of that contract and they can be your successor at right tackle. I mean, this year Austin Jackson could go down and you could have Savannah or Membo, just use them as examples, starting at right guard. When he goes down, they could take the right tackle job and never freaking look back. Well, you know what I mean?
And that's why Armand Membo is so attractive. You're a Dolphin because he's better than Austin Jackson.
Yeah,
he's better than Austin Jackson.
Light years.
So, like,
he's closer to Tristan Wirfs than he is Austin Jackson.
There was a time where Austin Jackson was a disaster, and right now I think he's a middle of the pack right tackle.
Yeah.
One thing that I hated though is he was playing as an upper echelon right tackle. We gave him that contract, and then he fell back.
But because we lost Hunt.
Yes. So maybe getting a good guard to pair with him is
big, could elevate him. Yeah, you're right.
Like Austin Jackson, though, like to me, like, yeah, he's another guy just like Jalen Phillips, maybe not for the same reason, but the jury's still out on him. Like,
yeah,
he's inconsistent too. Like he is. There's times where he looks really good, and there's times where he doesn't. Like I would say the jury's still out on Austin Jackson. He's likely to be here probably for the next couple years, but we'll see, because here's the one thing is they don't have to restructure any of these deals right now. They're cap compliant for the new league year, right?
Yeah.
So go out and spend, figure out what the tab is, then restructure to offset that tab. Like they don't have to make.
Clarify it for people,
right?
Clarify for people. You got to be cap compliant by the start of the new year.
4 p.m.
But you can go into the negatives.
During that week, yep.
And then you got to have it compliant by
the start of the football season.
Yeah. So
you could go negative. You could go in the red. The Dolphins could leave free agency $20 million over the cap and say, okay, damn.
Just want to
how are we going to get this? All right, we'll restructure Jordan Brooks until we're good. Oh, we need to sign our draft class. Okay, let's give Sealer a new deal and restructure Aaron Brewer, and that covers that. So they don't have to. Technically, the Dolphins
they could stop right now and just. Yeah, like you said, go make your moves and then restructure based on the moves you made, which is a smart idea.
Well, they practically, the way that I could look at it is that they have $25.8 million in their checking account, and they have the ability to get another $42 million on their credit card if they want to.
Okay,
like that's a good way of looking at it. So, like, and here's what I want to caution people who think that the Dolphins are going to take.
So give that number to everyone. The number they can get to, they're at a little over 25 right now, but the number they can get to is 67.7
is what my math would be. So give or take a few bucks depending on it. Like some people say that doesn't include the sign-in bonus for Kendall Fuller. I don't really know what that bonus did or what it is.
Yeah,
I've heard it could be $3 million. And over the cap is a Jets fan. I'm just being honest. He has the Dolphins numbers wrong all the time. Spot Track does a better job with the Dolphins.
But they're behind paywalls now, aren't they?
All of them. And you get all the ads and viruses on your computer when you click on them. Like, you got to be careful. But, like, the long story short is, like, we're telling you that the Dolphins are in a healthy position and they can make any move they want. But I think the smart move is to do what they did last year with Jonnu, Brewer, Jordan Brooks. You go at 3 or 4 of those type of players this year. And look, yeah, they missed on Odell Beckham. They missed on Jordan Poyer. Neither of those guys made $2 million a year. Like, I could care less, right? Like, it's just fodder. Like, who cares? They nailed Calais Campbell, right?
Yeah.
They nailed Jonnu Smith. They nailed Jordan Brooks. They nailed Aaron Brewer. Like, you give me 4 guys that I like are similar players for very good values like they just did. We're strengthening the core of this roster and the foundation. That's what they need to start thinking about doing.
Okay, I got 2 questions for you.
Yep.
How much cap do you expect them to start open free agency with? Do you think they'll follow the idea you had where they'll settle right now at their $25 million, let free agency play out, and then create money to balance the sheets? And then number 2, with opening up free agency, how do you see it playing out in terms of, do you think they are going to be very, very conscious like they were last year of, like, say, Javon Holland, of making sure they don't overspend to lose that comp pick?
So I think they'll be cautious of it, but I don't think they're going to be able to really hold back because of the amount of needs on this team to not offset it. Like I think we're going to get a late comp pick for Javon Holland. It might fall to a 6th, 7th based off the spend we have, because he'll get $20 million a year. But if we go sign Will Fries, that's 15, right? Like that's how quick it can change. Yeah. I think the Dolphins have the flexibility, and I think they're going to use it, because I don't think McDaniel and Chris Greer are safe. I don't think they're safe. I think it's going to take a lot for them to get fired, but another year, the same song and dance, like then you're putting yourself where your job is in jeopardy. So I think they're going to be wise. I do think they have one move in them that might shock us. The move I think they could make is on a cornerback, and I think Javarius Ward is a name that I would pay attention to. I can see Miami being interested in him as a guy to counteract and complement Jalen Ramsey. But yeah, I think, Reason, you're right. The smart approach is probably the right approach. But I also don't think Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel can help themselves. I really don't. Yeah.
It goes back to what you said, that they're desperate in last year. Like, they won't be able to help themselves.
Well, and this free agency class sucks, but there are a lot of veteran wide receivers out there, and the Dolphins have a receiver room of Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Taj Washington, and Malik Washington, right? Like, they need some bodies there. They need a bona fide 3. I think Malik Washington is a 4
I agree.
Who's a good special teams player to boot.
And slot, yeah.
But like, is there a guy, like, would you take a chance on an aging Keenan Allen to be your chain mover, right?
No, because you know who I think an interesting name, and follow me here, and he's cheap. He showed up in big games when they needed to, and he emerged last year when he got a quarterback. I think he's got nothing but ascending in front of him. Would you throw out a little bit of money to Diami Brown?
Oh, I like Diami Brown for sure. I like Darius Slayton is another guy.
I think he's going to be too expensive, though. I'm thinking he's going to get $14-15 million a year. I don't think they're going to pay that.
What did you see? Did you see what Tutu Atwell got today?
Yeah, $10 million a year.
Right, that's a lot.
Well, let me ask you this. Okay, we talked about Chubb earlier. Would you take a flyer on a guy who we saw what he did with Phillip Rivers? Would you take a flyer on a guy for cheap like Mike Williams? He's the size and what you need in the red zone, and
it would be cheap. That I can assure you. But yeah, like, you got to turn over a couple rocks here. You got to take some chances, right? Like, if Mike Williams was, he is an unrestricted free agent. I see, like, I try to think of players that were cut, and I think the Dolphins will operate if they can like that. Like, that's why, like, Jonathan Allen to me makes a lot of sense. Another guy that makes a lot of sense for Miami is Javon Hargrave. If he's really cut for the 49ers, like, he's a guy that I could see them being very interested in on a defensive line approach where, like, I think they want to get.
How much money do you think he's going to command, though?
I don't know, man. Like, look, you see those got cut from Seattle, Draymond Jones, just after getting $20 million. Like, there are some good veteran defensive tackles that are going to be available. And if they're cut, man, like Draymond Jones the year before in Denver was unbelievable for them. So I don't know, man. I do think the Dolphins are going to have it's not going to be quiet. Let's just put it that way. They'll make moves if they have to. They might explore some trades if they have to. Like, they're going to add, I would say that I'm comfortable saying that they're going to add 3 to 4 players that are legitimate starting quality players in free agency. And I think guard, defensive line, and safety are probably where 3 of them are. Probably a reunion with Terrell Dodson, I think, is something that's going to happen. I think there could be a reunion with Benito Jones on a fair deal if needed. Man, the deal that I want to see come across the ticker, and I don't think it is I would love to see Calais Campbell come back for one more year, man.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all want that, right?
Yeah,
but
he's a beast.
I'm not holding my breath. I'm gonna be honest with you.
I think it's Lions or Ravens all day long.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so bro, final thoughts before we get out of here.
Yeah, man. Look, hey, to answer your question, I didn't really answer. Is I think they will restructure some contracts because I think they have to enter free agency knowing that they have about $12 million that they're going to have to allocate to their draft class. So I think they are going to make moves. And I'm going to go 100% agreement with you. The guy, if I had to put a name on a player that I think is going to be a Miami Dolphin come September when the season starts, I think Jonathan Allen is a guy that makes a lot of sense. He's a huge and I'll take it down another level. You give me Jonathan Allen, Zach Sealer, and Kenny Grant. That's the best defensive line the Dolphins had in a long time.
Yeah, I agree. And hey, man, free agency opens up March 12th, 4 p.m. So we'll be live next week. It'll be day 2 of free agency.
Yep.
I'll be live on day 1 of free agency. Probably not going to do the finish line because I'll be live throughout the day. So, man, and then the tampering window, it opens up very soon too, right? So we are it's about to start. It's about to.
And you know what, though? The last 48 hours, there's been a lot of good veterans that have been made available and releases. So, like, I've been crapping on this free agent class for a while, but I'm interested to see some of these names that shake free. Like, how about this? I'll throw one more thing before we roll. Reunion with Raekwon Davis, in or out?
Yeah, I know. He got cut today. I mean, at the right price, I'm down for sure.
Not at $8 million, but if it's 4 to 5, I'm in for Raekwon.
For sure.
Right.
So, guys, tampering window, it opens up March 10th. Free agency starts March 12th. I'll be live on Saturday dropping my top 30 free agent targets for the Miami Dolphins and some honorable mentions. Make sure you tune in. That'll be an early afternoon show. So I'll see you all on Sunday unless something breaks tomorrow. Until then, you already know what time it is. Fins up all day, every day. We'll see you on the next one.
See you guys.